We like to believe we choose who we become, and in many ways, we do. But the way we love, argue, trust, and pull away in relationships is often shaped long before we ever had a choice in the matter, starting in childhood. Marriage researchers Milan and Kay Yerkovich identified 5 distinct love styles that develop based on our upbringing. Today, we're walking through all 5 and looking at how each one finds its healing, not just in self-awareness, but in how Scripture describes God's consistent presence. 1. The pleaser. Often raised with an overprotective, angry, or critical parent, pleasers learned early that being good and agreeable kept them safe. As adults, they struggle to say no, avoid conflict at almost any cost, and can spread themselves thin trying to keep everyone happy. Under stress, pleasers may suddenly withdraw or flee relationships entirely. Scripture offers something pleasers rarely received growing up: unconditional acceptance. Ephesians 2, verse 8-9, makes clear that grace isn't earned through performance, a truth pleasers especially need to hear, since their whole pattern was built on earning safety through pleasing. 2. The victim. Often raised in chaotic, sometimes volatile homes, victims learned to stay quiet and unnoticed to survive. As adults, they may struggle with low self-esteem, anxiety, and depression, and can find themselves drawn to controlling partners who mirror old patterns. Even calm can feel unsettling, since chaos was once the norm. Scripture repeatedly describes God as a refuge specifically for the powerless. Psalm 34, verse 18 says, "God is close to the brokenhearted." For someone who learned to hide to survive, being truly seen and safe is often the deepest healing available. 3. The controller. Often raised without much protection, controllers learned to toughen up and rely only on themselves. As adults, they equate control with safety and often use anger to avoid feeling vulnerable again. They resist stepping outside their comfort zone and prefer solving everything alone. Scripture repeatedly invites surrender rather than self-reliance. Proverbs 3, verse 5 calls us to trust God rather than lean solely on our own understanding. For a controller, learning to release control to a trustworthy God can become the first place real trust is rebuilt. 4. The vacillator. Often raised by an unpredictable parent, vacillators learned their needs weren't a priority, developing a deep fear of abandonment alongside anger when attention finally came too late. As adults, they can idealize new relationships quickly, then grow doubtful and hurt when reality doesn't match the ideal. They're often highly perceptive of others pulling away. Scripture offers a strikingly different model of consistency. Hebrews 13, verse 8 describes God as unchanging, the same yesterday, today, and forever. For someone who never had predictable love, a consistent, unwavering presence is exactly the corrective needed. 5. The avoider. Often raised in homes valuing independence over affection, avoiders learn to handle everything alone and put emotional needs aside early. As adults, they lean heavily on logic and detachment and can feel uncomfortable around others' emotional intensity. Scripture, however, consistently models a God who draws near, not one who stays distant. James 4, verse 8 says, "If we draw near to God, He draws near to us." For an avoider, learning that closeness doesn't have to mean losing independence can be transformative. None of these 5 patterns are character flaws. They were originally coping strategies, formed to survive real circumstances in childhood. But strategies that once kept us safe can quietly limit our relationships as adults if left unexamined. What's striking is that each style's original wound has a direct answer in how Scripture describes God's character. Not performance-based acceptance, but grace. Not chaos, but refuge. Not control, but trustworthy surrender. Not inconsistency, but unchanging presence. Not distance, but nearness. If you recognized yourself in one of these styles, here's where to start. 1. Name your pattern honestly, without judgment. It developed for a reason, and understanding it is the first step toward changing it. 2. Notice where the pattern shows up in your closest relationships. That's usually where it's strongest. 3. Let God's character speak directly to your specific wound. Whichever style you recognized, look up the verses mentioned and sit with them intentionally. 4. Consider counseling alongside this reflection. Attachment patterns formed over years usually benefit from more than self-awareness alone. Which love style did you recognize in yourself? Whichever one it was, it isn't the end of your story. It's simply where healing can begin. Subscribe to Grace to Grow. Every week, we explore one mind and one scripture at a time. Let's grow together.